Hi,
Morning.
Amy. Morning. Oh, let's ask you something. Oh, I want to ask you, Amy, from an audiological point of view. My sister was doing some gardening a few years ago, and like some sweat rolled into one ear, and it's like never been the same since then.
Ooh. Has
Yeah.
she been to the doctor?
No.
Because the first thing to do, of course, is to check to see if there's some sort of a blockage, either an infection or an insect or something that's
Mm,
actually in the ear. And
mm.
the doctor might also, at the office, might also be able to do a hearing test or send her for a hearing test, but it could be a medical thing. So
Yeah.
that's the
It's
first thing to
affected her
check.
hearing. She.
For sure, but it could be that there's a blockage and it's temporary and not permanent. So that's
Okay.
what you want to check. I mean, there are people that have gotten insects who've crawling into the ear and have just died and stayed there, and it's a blockage. It has to come out.
Oh, okay. So could a regular PCP look in the ear and see that?
Well, certainly that's where she should go first. I mean, I don't know what her health insurance is, but usually, you go to the PCP first. They take a look and then they decide, no, maybe you should go to a specialist or it's something that they can take care of. So
Okay,
that's
thanks.
really the first step would be to go to the doctor to see if, you want to rule out something medical. You don't want to say, oh, I don't hear, let's get a hearing aid. No, you want to start off and make sure everything medical checked out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Rabbi.
Oh, hi, Danny. Did you go to Mrs. Gopin's funeral?
Uh, no, but we go to paying a shiva call.
Yeah.
Rabbi, I just want to mention I expected the four Benot to be here now. Two of them are somewhere else, and one's running late. So I apologize.
Okay? I was looking forward to it.
I know.
But
I know. I'm sorry.
I heard regards though from Shira and Hodaya through Talia Greenboehm, who was in Israel for the last 3 weeks and got together with them.
Oh, well, they're supposed to be here, but
okay. Where are you? I can see buildings in the background. Where are you located now?
I'm in Petah Tikva. I just came from the Schneider Hospital, and
okay.
They're treating 19 kids who are hostages in Gaza. They're now trying to help them, work with them, which is really something special.
In Boston?
No. In Israel.
Well, I'm thinking of the Schneider burn.
So, no, you're a little confused, but that's all right. And so they're very anxious if they want to do a Zoom session with us sometime for the community and things like that. So maybe we could set something up. We'll see.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would.
I don't want my
I'd be
girls.
very
I don't want to take
interested in that.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. Marsha and I yesterday were working in houses with tomatoes down near Gaza, which is kind of freaky because you could hear the war going on while you were, pruning tomato bushes. A little, a little surreal, I have to say. I don't want to take it. I'm assuming they're going to be here. Maybe they're supposed to be eventually, but I don't want to interrupt the rest of. Anyway, I just want to let you know.
Thanks for the update. And I would be interested if Schneider's does have a spokesman or somebody who could give an update to our community, as we've been supporting them significantly over the years. And we also we would love to have them, maybe give a Zoom update to maybe a lunchtime slot, like at noon or something.
We got the time difference, but we'll try to work something out.
Well, that's what I mean. Easter, noon here would be like 7 there.
7 o'clock there, right? Okay. I got one girl coming. I don't know. All right, I'll let you go on with your class, and I'll show a face and see who else goes up. All right, sorry, Rabbi.
No, this is great. It's always good to connect to you and to Israel. Hope everyone else is enjoying the snow, which Danny cannot enjoy. The first snow is always fun, and then the second snow is annoying.
That is true. Yeah, we didn't get snow here. Just want to let it.
No,
not
I've
yet.
been in Massachusetts for too long, and I'm sorry.
It broke up there, Janie, but I'll just share that if you have young kids, then the first snow is especially special
Okay.
because the delight they have to run outdoors and sled
Yeah,
and
my
make
grandkids
snowmen
like
and
seeing
forts and all that.
pictures.
All right, so
Yeah.
here is Shira.
Hi.
Oh, shalom, shalom. טוב לראות אותך.
גם אתכם. How are you?
We're good. We're thinking about you and about the milchama in Israel, but we're glad to see your smile, and we got a good update from Talia. Did you see Talia last week?
Talia
Oh,
Greenbaum.
yeah. We saw them. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Can you give us a little life update? Where are you studying this year? Are you in Ariel?
Yeah. Last week I start. And wish
Okay.
me luck. It will be okay.
We are so proud of Shira.
That's great. What are you studying there after 1 week? Do you already have a declared
She's got a degree. She
focus?
got a Torah Rishon already.
No, I'm studying accounting.
Okay. Great.
Runs in the family.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I'm glad that all of the English that you learned in Sharon has stayed with you.
Yeah, thank you. I try to keep.
Okay. Well, בהצלחה רבה על בלימודים שלך, וחזק ואמץ על כל המצב בארץ עכשיו.
תודה.
Toda Rabbi. Rabbi, I'm sorry to interrupt the class. I'll let you go on.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to share screen with the source sheet. That's not it. That's the visiting hours for the Shiva Minyan. Starting tomorrow.
Mrs. Gopin, was that Ruth Gopin's mother?
No. Ellen Marcus's mother.
Oh, okay.
So I was referencing the Shiva here in Sharon for Sharon Ravid.
For her father.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to continue with our regularly scheduled program of our Parshat HaShavua. And I've been reading my son Ezra at night. There is a book that was produced by PJ Library, which is an effort to have parents read children Jewish-themed books before bed. And they send out books almost every month to every one of your children, depending on their age. And so they sent one to one of my older kids. It's a chapter book. And it's sort of it's a recounting of the story of the Exodus, but the plot is that two kids, find the magic carpet of their grandmother in the attic, and they get on the magic carpet, and it takes them to the house of Paro, during the Exodus, and they get a first hand view of front row seat of what's going on. And one of the things that they can't understand is why Paro refuses to listen. Why not let the people go? What does he have against Moshe? And so in the book, again, it's more of like historical fiction. The theory that's advanced is that there's a lot of family dynamics that are in play, because Ramses and Moses grew up together, right? And this is actually well depicted in the movie.
The Prince of Egypt.
the Ten Commandments, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you can see, that the two of them recognize each other because they really, were raised in the palace together. And also in the Prince of Egypt, when they take that chariot ride through Egypt as brothers, as they were raised in the house of Paro at similar times and are similar ages. So that's not really the pshat, in the text, but certainly the Midrash points to their, relationship with each other, and this book signifies that it was really about brotherly competition. That Paro didn't want to let the people go because it was Moshe asking, and he didn't want to give his brother, his half brother, whatever his, an inch. He didn't want to allow. He didn't want to compromise at all, with his brother, which again is part of the, the moral import of this book for children to be thinking about their sibling relationships. So it's not typically the lens that we think about in the negotiations between Paro and Moshe, but nonetheless, it's a fascinating lens to consider. So this morning, I want to consider a different lens in terms of why doesn't Paro listen? So we're going to begin with the logical reason that he doesn't listen, which is an argument that Moshe actually registers with God, which we'll read in the first source here. Vayidaber Moshe lifnei Hashem lemor. So Moshe said to God as follows. Usually Vayidaber is Lashon Kasher, as opposed to Vayomer is Lashon Raka. So not in every case, but in many cases, the way that Chazal view the difference between the word Vayomer and Vayidaber is soft, and Vayidaber is a little stronger, right? So if God is being spoken to by Moshe with Vayidaber, then maybe there's a bit of a stronger tone that's being employed in this exchange. So what is it that Moshe says? Hen b'nei Yisrael lo sham'u elai. Alas, the sons of Israel, the Jewish people, refused to listen to me when I told them that I was going to deliver them from the taskmasters and lead them out of Egypt, right? They could not listen. They could not hear. They could not actually accept what Moshe was articulating. Ve'ech yishma'eni paro. And so if the people aren't going to listen, then how could Paro listen to me? This is Moshe's argument to say, why isn't Paro going to listen? Because if the Jewish people aren't going to listen, why would he listen? Va'ani arel sfatayim. Alas, I can't even speak well. So Rashi says on this, ve'ech yishma'eni paro, ze'achad me'asrei kal v'chomer shebatorah. So he quotes from the Midrash, says this is one of 11 times, one of 10 times in the Torah where this kind of kal v'chomer argument is made. It's sort of a little bit comical because the kal v'chomer argument is one of the classic, rabbinic kinds of modes of argumentation. We say it in Rabbi Yishmael Omer every morning after Korbanot that there are different ways that the rabbis deduced law from the Torah, and Kal v'chomer is one of the key ones that they use to deduce, evaluate, and adjudicate law from the Chamishe Chumshei Torah. And then they say they're actually, this logic, this form of legal derivation is actually employed by the Torah itself in 10 instances, and this is one of them. And the basic way that a kal v'chomer, works is that if something is the case by X, which is kal, which is more lenient, then all the more so it would apply to Y, which is more stringent. And so what's the logic that Moshe is saying here? If the Jewish people aren't going to listen to me and they're the ones who are going to have something coming to them, right? It's good news and they're still refusing it. That's the kal. Then The chomer, the more stringent, is that Paro, who is having bad news delivered to him, all the more so he's not going to listen. We all know that we have a bias against negative news. We deny when things are negative, when there's a bad consequence that we're going to suffer from. Our first reaction is to know that that doesn't apply to me. Maybe it didn't really happen, right? We have this bias against things which are harmful to us out of our own sort of protective instinct. And the Jewish people rejected something that was good for them. And so all the more so, Paro is going to reject something that's bad for him. So that's
but Rabbi,
the basic
isn't it usually, I mean, in life, isn't it actually the opposite? That, your own family doesn't listen to you, but a stranger might. That's what it really happened. I mean, isn't that what happened, with Yonah? He said, the Jewish people don't listen, but this foreign nation listened to him, but the Jewish people wouldn't. I mean, we used to have that actually in our shul. The previous rabbi, he would teach classes at Young Israel. Maybe 3 or 4 people would show up, but he'd teach classes farther away. And he's a great expert. They'd have 25, 30 people showing up. So what's an expert is somebody who comes from a distance, somebody who's in your own family. Big deal, but a stranger, they're more apt to actually listen to.
Great. So I was about to ask how we can break down the logic of this Kal V'chomer, and you just gave a great, pircha is what it's called. Is a pircha is like a repudiation, a way of deconstructing the argument. So you gave one suggestion, which is that if Moshe thinks he's not going to be listened to by his own family, there's a good reason for that, because they're his family. They don't take him seriously. They take him for granted, right? Whereas Paro is, an audience that is a bit foreign, right? So of course, for that, we have to actually put aside what we know to be true, familially speaking, which is that Moshe wasn't raised among the Jews, and they see him as not among them. Whereas Paro, is on first term basis with Moshe, and in the historical fiction that I'm reading to my son, they actually call each other by their nicknames, to just show that they actually are teasing each other the entire time, and that's what's actually going on here. It's about a family feud and not about a nation versus a nation, not about polytheism versus monotheism. It's about brothers fighting, right? So if we put that sort of lens, that familial lens aside, and we say that at this point, Moshe has already endeared himself to the Jewish people, he's reconnected with Aaron and Miriam, and he's already been estranged from Ramses, who is the next Paro, if we're going to take that historical approach. And so there's a reason why he would be, not taken seriously by his own people. And perhaps there's a window of, possibility for him to be taken seriously by outsiders. What other ways can we repudiate, can we dismantle the logic of this Kal V'chomer, of this argument that Moshe is making to Hashem, to try and say...
The other thing is that, this explanation, it takes God out of the equation. We got to put God back into the equation. So, when Moshe comes in and he says, in the name of God, let these people go, and Paro looks at him and says, who's that God? I never heard of him. That's not my God. I don't know who that is. And God has already said to Moshe that you're going to go in, you're going to ask, he's going to deny it. And when he denies it, it's like, in a good story, in any good story, the writer, they won't, like, if it's, this is the problem, this is the solution, boom, you don't have much of a story, but this is the problem. And then there's resistance and more resistance and more resistance, so that when you have the resolution, it's so much greater. And Hashem wants to make a buildup so that there is resistance and there is resistance, and then there's the plagues, and then there's the wonders, and then there's the miracles, and then there's the riches, and then the people go out. So Hashem, he's doing a big buildup.
So you're looking at it from sort of the longitudinal, perspective, that we want to have a very long process of the leaving of Egypt, which requires there to be a lot of denial of Paro, and a lot of not listening to Moshe, so that when the when the dam breaks, there's a lot of water that comes out, right? But how does that repudiate the Kal Vachomer here? Because this is before Moshe even really approaches Paro for the first time. He is saying that I don't think Paro is going to ever listen to me, because even my own people won't listen to me. So how am I going to get credibility? How am I going to get any traction with Paro if I can't even win over my own base, my own, locals? How am I going to make it on the big stage if I can't make it in my own house?
But God says back to him, he says, look, I'll take care of it. And that's when he shows him the wonders. He shows him the staff that turns into the snake. He shows him when his hand comes out as Saraz and goes back in. He says, look, these are the wonders. These are the miracles. I'm in charge. I can take care of it.
Right. So how does that dismantle the argument that Moshe is making?
Well, basically, he's telling him, don't, it's not your concern. It's my concern. I'm in charge.
So that's what Hashem is saying to Moshe. Don't worry about Paro not listening, because I have a plan here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rabbi?
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, could it be that Moshe had his own doubts? Just in general, that the people would go free, and maybe that was conveyed by saying, "Oh, the people won't listen to me." Maybe he had his own.
So
he ran away.
Some insecurity by saying the people won't listen to me, and therefore how will Paro listen to me? So I want to try to return back to my specific question about the breakdown of this argument, of this logic, and remind us that the Torah itself offers a legitimate reason for why the Jewish people would not listen, and why Paro might listen, which is the dismantling of the logic of Moshe's claim. And what is that explanation? So just a few psukim earlier, again, remember that we read this initial claim, this argument of Moshe in Shmot Vav Yud Bet 6:12. In 6:9, just a few psukim earlier, we read Vaydaber Moshe Kain El Bnei Yisrael. So Moshe delivered the good news to the Jewish people that he was going to be delivering from the hands of Paro. Velo shamu el Moshe, and they didn't listen to Moshe. Why not? Mikotze ruach u'me'avodah kasha. They couldn't listen to him because they had shortness of breath, and they were working too hard. Somebody who is scheduled every second of their day with grueling physical labor isn't going to have the mental space to hear good news, because they are buried underneath the weight of their responsibilities. They can't actually, on many levels, the Mefarshim explain what is the nature of Mikotze Ruach, that they had no spirit. They couldn't see things in a way that was non-material or non-physical. They had no ruach to them because they were forced through centuries of labor to engage the world in physical terms. They couldn't imagine a God that would do something supernatural for them. It was beyond their wildest imagination. They couldn't even fantasize about it because they had no reference to anything like that in generations, right? So maybe that's the mikotze ruach. I mean, avodah kasha is maybe a more practical piece that, like, Moshe was preaching to them and they were all leaving already for the next shift, right? They had too much to get done to actually pay attention, to internalize, to think about what Moshe was saying to them. They had too much to do on their to-do list. Now they had to make, bricks from scratch. They didn't have the luxury to, listen to somebody philosophizing about this monotheistic God who was going to give them, good things. And that's in contrast to Paro. Paro does not have any kotze ruach and avodah kasha, right? The reason the Jewish people couldn't listen is explained quite explicitly, and that's not the case by Paro, who was open, available, and very interested in listening to, philosophy and theology and politics, right? That's what he was that's what he spent his time doing. So why is it, that how does this argument of Moshe actually work if there is a clear pircha, a clear repudiation of it in the text itself, right? What case is Moshe making to God about the people not listening and therefore Paro not listening if we just explained why the people weren't listening, and that reason doesn't apply to Paro, and therefore maybe Paro will listen? Does anyone else have any other suggestions of ways to sort of undermine or deconstruct the logic of Moshe's argument to God about why Paro wouldn't listen? Okay, so let's stay with this. Let's stay with this one for a minute, and I want to show you the explanation of the Orach Chaim. The Orach Chaim says Kal v'chomer. I want to focus on the second part here, because the first comment is really a reference to something he said earlier. So I'll read here: Ve'im ne'emar ki Moshe gam yada ki ta'am shelo shamuhu letzad mikotze ruach yihia hakal v'chomer mufrach. So if Moshe did know the reason why the Jewish people weren't listening to him, then he would not have made the argument, because the argument would have been undermined. It would have been flipped. So what is the Orach Chaim suggesting here? That Moshe didn't know why the Jewish people weren't listening to him. If we go back to the Pasuk and read it carefully, we can appreciate that this is within the text itself, right? Vaydaber Moshe kena b'nei Yisrael v'alu shamu al Moshe. They didn't listen to him. Why did they listen to him? Mikotze ruach avodah kasha. Who is the author of this pasuk? God knows why they're not listening. But when somebody doesn't respond to you, do you know why? You can speculate, but you don't usually know unless they tell you. So Moshe here knows that the Jewish people aren't listening to him. He doesn't know why. And it's Hashem who is saying, these are the two reasons, right? But Moshe doesn't actually, Moshe doesn't actually know that those are the reasons why the Jewish people are unable to receive his message of deliverance. Okay, so that's step one. Step two is from the Malbim. So what does Moshe presume the reason is for the people not listening to him if he doesn't know that there is a legitimate reason for them because it's mikotze ruach avodah kasha? So let's see what the Malbim fills in here. the Malbim says, Ulam achar shira'a Moshe shebnei Israel lo shamu elav. He sees that he is repeatedly telling the people good news. He's bringing them good tidings of things to come, and they just turn the other way. They don't give him the time of day. They might be there and then they leave in the middle of his speech, or they're not even showing up to his speech. So he thinks maybe it's because he's coming alone and he doesn't have the zakenim, he doesn't have Aaron, right? So the next time he goes back with an entourage, he goes back with a group of people who are more trusted, right? So maybe he suspects that it has something to do with his own deficiency, that he is not a trusted figure, he's not a known figure amongst the Jewish people. He didn't grow up, with them. He's not an enslaved member of the Jewish people, so maybe there's some suspicion about that. V'chishev shehasiba lazeh, and maybe he thought that the reason that he wasn't being listened to, mipnei shu aral sifatayim, v'lo hatzia hadvarim kara'oi, and he had a speech impediment, he was tongue-tied, he had some kind of lisp, he had some kind of uncircumcised, tongue, right? All different explanations for that, which we've explored in previous years. And so because of that speech impediment, v'lo hitzia hadvarim kara'oi, he wouldn't be able to, he didn't enunciate the words properly to the Jewish people, and that's why they couldn't hear him. The Bnei Israel lo shamu elai af shetchila ha'aminu lidvari, right? And if the Jewish people didn't listen to me, even though in the beginning they had faith in my words, if mishmei parosh shelo hitchila ha'amin klal, right? So if the Jewish people do have some level of emunah, and the Paro doesn't have any, emunah, then how is he going to ever listen to me if I have these deficiencies? So what the Malbim is suggesting here is that the argument that Moshe is making to Hashem is twofold, right? First, it's that the Jewish people might have some faith in you and they're not going to listen. And if Paro has no faith in you, then how is he going to ever listen to what you're saying, right? That's point number one. But the reason, or point number two, I should say, is that Moshe attributes the reasons to Bnei Israel not listening to his own shortcomings. And if we read that back in the Pasuk, we'll see that this is really, I think, the pshat. Vaydaber Moshe lifnei Hashem le'emor, hein b'nei Israel lo shamu elai, the Jewish people didn't listen to me. Ve'ich yishmeni Paro, how is Paro going to listen to me? Va'ani arel sfatayim. Right? I get tongue-tied. And so if I get tongue-tied and I couldn't deliver the message to my own people, then somebody else who has, even less patience and less expectations and less belief in you, my speech impediment is going to get in the way even more. So the lesson, that we can take from here is that Moshe didn't see the people's shortcomings, but rather saw his own.
Mm-hmm.
And the logic behind his argument is based on that premise. That in Moshe's, stellar character, he saw the reasons why things weren't working as his responsibility for his own character, his own deficiencies, right? And he didn't think to blame the people for their problems and judge them for their issues through the Kotzei Ruach and the Avodah Kasha. And that's why he could make this Kal V'chomer to say that if I have the speech impediment, that got in the way of the Jewish people who wanted to believe in me and wanted to believe in Hashem, then the speech impediment's going to get in the way of somebody else, listening to me who doesn't have that tendency either. And so what we see here, is really inspiring leadership, which is that, Moshe hangs the shortcoming on himself and not on the people. And we all, get into arguments and disagreements and little sort of miscommunications with people all the time. And the sort of, psychological insight here that we can take from Moshe is that instead of seeing, the other person, instead of externalizing problems and transferring them to somebody else through what's called transference, right? When we see problems, or when we blame others for the problems that are really originating from us, right? Moshe exhibits stellar leadership when he sees his potential involvement with the problem before blaming others for the problem. He looks at the issue through his own lacking and deficiencies, and based on that, he's making the argument to God that if I have these shortcomings and they, resulted in not being listened to for my people, these shortcomings are going to be judged even more harshly in the court of Paro, where everyone's going to judge me for my presentation. Everyone's going to laugh at my lisp. Everyone's going to say, this is the representative of the Jewish people. He can't even, get out a full sentence.
I'm thinking about the king, the British king that had that stutter, and he had to take over during World War II. And he worked with a speech therapist to overcome that stuttering. Yeah.
Yep.
But he had to take the reins no matter what.
Right. So this is the approach of Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, who in his commentary writes that we see Moshe's greatness here in that he blames himself before blaming the people. Now, this is early on in his tenure as leader, right? Later on, he does get pretty upset and frustrated with the people on several occasions, where he loses his cool, and that's part of Moshe Rabbeinu's, downfall at the rock, where he says he blames the people instead of taking responsibility himself. But at least at the beginning of his career, we see this exemplary midah of being able to look at a problem through what one did to contribute to it instead of how someone else is to blame for it. Right. Mm-hmm. And the reason, that this piece resonated with me this week is because I had a miscommunication with my wife on Motzei Shabbos about carpool, and I was really tired. And I wanted to blame her for the miscommunication, but I read this piece and I was like, wow, you know what? The reason why we miscommunicated is because I was tired and I didn't explain myself clearly. Mm-hmm. I just took shortcuts and assumed she would know what I meant because she's my wife, right? She can read between the lines. But when I read this piece, I was like, you know what? I should actually apologize for speaking in shorthand and not explaining the carpool situation properly or clearly because I was lazy, because I was tired, right? And that's why the issue came to be, right? So all of us can apply this lesson in our day-to-day, lives, in the way that we interact with, our own family members, our own community members, our own neighbors. That that Moshe Rabbeinu first saw problems in terms of how he contributed to them, mm-hmm. which is much harder to do. The instinct that we have, the protective instinct that we have when we see problems is who can we point a finger at, mm-hmm. right? Who can we blame this problem on so that we don't have to change our own opinions, our own behaviors, and we can move on with our own smug self-conception, right? And this is a very natural thing for us to do as we shirk responsibility and try to assume everyone else should be the one that's, owning up to things and changing their ways to make our lives easier. But, what Moshe shows here in this argument that he is making to Hashem is that he is taking personal responsibility for what went wrong and saying the reason the people didn't listen to me is because of my own deficiency. And if I have this deficiency, then how am I going to be able to make it in the big leagues, right? And so the response of Hashem is very much to this point. Whereas you think you have this deficiency, Moshe, so what does Hashem say? I'm the one that makes people speak. Hashem says, I'm the one that makes people speak. Language comes for me, so I'll be able to make sure that when you need to speak, you'll speak, right? And I'll also give you Aaron, who can be, your spokesman, right? Which addresses that concern of being alone, right? And not having a wingman, right? And somebody to help him out and give him that boost of confidence, right? So we can see from the way that Hashem responds to Moshe and this argument that what was undergirding it was Moshe's self-blame. Because the way that Hashem responds to it is to say that I will help you out by addressing that deficiency that you perceive that you have.
Yeah. Lack of faith in himself.
Yeah. So he didn't think he had the tools. And Hashem says, I'll gird you with the right tools. Right? So it's a lesson for all of us when we, confront, issues, challenges, disagreements.
You froze, Rabbi. We don't hear you.
Here before pointing the finger, right? There's a finger at somebody else. You're pointing 3 fingers at yourself.
Mm. So, Rabbi, do you think he spoke in Hebrew to the Jewish people and in Egyptian to Ramses?
I don't know. The Midrash says that he worked, through interpreters.
Oh.
But that's
in
not
the court. In the court or to the people?
Both, that there were interpreters around. But the rendition of that we have in the Torah makes it seem like it was direct communication.
I have a question.
Yeah, Esther.
How did they decide to say that Vaidaber is stronger than Vayomer? Is it because of the different? I can see why in Hebrew, because Yadaber is a binyan PL, which is usually stronger, and Amar is binyan Pa'al. Is that how they came up to the idea, or because the content was?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. I'm just trying to find the Chazal right now. It's actually a Chazal on the first pasuk in Parshat Va'era, because our Parsha begins with Vaidaber. Hold on. I'm gonna have to get back to you about that because the argument you're making based on binyan is a compelling one.
Because if you say shavar is broke, shiber in PL, like diber, it's broke into pieces. So by changing the binyan, you make it a strong, not everywhere, but it's usually
it makes it
the case.
It sort of amplifies it and makes it a bit more
I wonder
intense.
if they came up with the idea because of the language, because of the grammar, or because every time it was used, it was stronger.
Yeah. So the first pasuk of our parsha of Vayidaber Elokim El Moshe, Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem. So the Chazal on this say that Elokim is Midat Hadin, and that's associated with Vayidaber. It's stronger. And Vayomer is the Yud Hey and then the Vav Hey, which is Midat Harachamim. It's softer. So that seems like it's a little bit more based on context, right? And the name of God, which uses one of those verb forms.
But it works well with the grammar too.
Yeah, but it's underscored and
Yeah.
supported by the PL insight that you made. So it's good to have a Hebrew professor here. It's a
And with
great insight.
Yeah, and Kotzer Ruach is impatient, that they didn't have the patience to listen. The Kotzer Ruach, yeah. You can say it now, you can use it in modern language. Kotzer Ruach, like his fuses are short.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't have the calm presence to pay attention.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
Those are two great insights. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody
I'm
for
glad I could
participating.
participate in the class.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
glad it
think
worked
I'll
out.
be able. Tomorrow I'm teaching again.
Okay, you're on break now.
What?
Between the
We had a
semesters?
break, but we didn't have a class also, and we were away. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Okay. Well,
what
wish everyone a
Hebrew word
wonderful week.
did Gilbert tell you about the crying or the sighing? Something like kvetching? You mentioned it last night.
It's not a Hebrew word. It's a Yiddish word.
And what is the word?
Tests. If you have Google Translate, put in there groan and press a Yiddish, and you'll see the spelling in Ivrit in the how to pronounce krechts. It's a lot of kufs and chafs and tzadiks and reish in there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like you said yesterday, great onomatopoeia, or whatever you pronounce that word.
Yeah. Just for those that weren't there, Janice was referencing something I mentioned yesterday in Shul between Mincha and Maariv. So not connected to this parsha shir.
So are we having a class tonight on Mishnah? Are you still teaching?
Yeah.
And
yeah, you're welcome to join.
Yeah, it's not online, right? And it's Pirkei Avot, no Pirkei Avot, Baba Metzia.
Yeah, we're doing the third parak of Baba Metzia.
Perek Vav, you said Perek Vav.
We're doing parak Gimel right now.
Gimel, okay.
Yeah. So we're using the Komdat method of deconstructing the elements of Mishnah, which is a methodology that's utilized in Israel to break apart a Mishnah based on the 5 different components that are in most Mishnayot. So we're pretty much just applying that method to different prakim of Mishnah. Okay, wishing everyone a wonderful day. Kol Tuv, and
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.